Kyle Ellicott, your host for another edition of VC TV. Welcome back. We have, again, an exciting, packed week for you. We've been talking about everything from AR and VR to deep technologies to space to education. And now, building up to before our grand master show for the end of the week, we are talking today about machine learning and data. What does that mean? Oh, and I broke my very first rule. So we are here to talk all about machine learning and data. What does it all mean? What does it not mean? Where is the ethics? Where are not the ethics? Where is the privacy, the security, and what are the new applications and business models that will be introduced going forward? And with that, I am joined by some of the experts and greatest investors in the industry, looking at this from all corners of the world, making investments and also helping companies along and building those companies in this space as well. Now, as we do here on every episode of VC TV, a big thank you to you, our audience, for tuning in. At any point today, if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them into the chat box. We would love to hear from you. And we'll do our best, Elena and I and the LA Token team, to ask them in real time. If we don't get to them, don't worry. We're all available 24/365 in our new digital lives that we all live today. If you don't know what that reference is, check out our episode on Tuesday as we discuss how we are now living in a more digitized way than we ever have been and not even realizing it. So are we digital or are we physical? That was a great cybernetics episode that we talked about earlier this week. But to continue on the fun, investors that are tuning in, if you'd like to be on a show like today or others where we talk about different technologies, industries, and regions around the world as things are emerging, shifting, or maybe not, we'd love to have you. Share your thoughts and insights on what's going on in the world. Entrepreneurs, guess what? There is an opportunity for you as well. We'd love to have you here on the show to chance to talk with us, to pitch us your idea and our live audience as well. Do reach out in both cases to Elena, myself, and to the entire LA Token team. And we'd love to get you set up. And a big shout out to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making VC TV possible on your device, on your screen, anywhere you may be watching around the world. And let's get started. We got an all-star cast of good friends, some new friends, some old friends from around the world who have joined in on this conversation, as it's a big, big topic, specifically around data. We've got a crap load of data. Data that's good, data that's bad, data that's ugly. What do we do with it? Data, as we talked about in previous episodes of VC TV, data is perishable. It sounds like it's the greatest thing in the world, but guess what? Sometimes it does have a time frame. What can we do with all this data? How can we make sure the data is not skewed and it's used in the right way? Well, that is what we're going to unpack, along with where are the opportunities in this space as well. So, without further ado, welcome to the show, one of my old friends, both in the world of the physical and of the digital. He comes to us all the way from the great land of Toronto. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Alex. Alex, welcome to the show. First time guest, pleasure. We've done podcasts together. We've done everything else, but we've never done a Zoom VC TV before. So welcome, a little intro, a little background for the audience.
Awesome. Thanks, Kyle. I'm still waiting for our podcast to come out, by the way. That's it's trapped in your backlog somewhere in our purely digital world, I guess.
It is. Gary's AI is helping me find it. I lost it, but go ahead.
Amazing. No, so I appreciate the invite, appreciate being included on this. So myself, I'm the Chief Investment Officer and co-founder of something called Bicameral Ventures. And we started out as a venture platform, but we really sort of have evolved into what we think about as a capital organization platform, where we do venture investing, we do special purpose vehicles, we do advisory, we're building several businesses right now, but all sort of under this fundamental organizing principle of technology's allowed us to connect in ways and transact in ways and at speeds and velocities that we've never ever been able to do before. But at the same time, it's absolutely assassinated our ability to trust in each other. And as these velocities continue to increase, our individual interactions and our interactions with our institutions are getting less and less trusted and less able to be validated, less able to be tracked. And there's more and more that we're sort of losing control over, as you talked about the physical versus the digital world. And so we're entering into this world where it's essentially our digital personas that are our new avatars that exist and that are governing and are the the tip of the spear for our entire interaction with everybody. And especially as we go through pandemic and lockdown and we're more and more isolated and more removed, those pieces of data become more and more important. And so the things that we invest in and things that we work on are all sort of the various suites of solutions that start taking out little bits of those problems, because it's such a big macro problem that is worth trillions of dollars to solve. But it's not going to be one company. It's not going to be one solution. It's not going to be one technology. It's this big suite of essentially trust technologies that we think about. So we spend a lot of time in the blockchain space, obviously. We spend a lot of time in the AI space. We spend a lot of time in the IoT space. But where our favorite stuff and where we spend the most time is where those things overlap, and then where you can build the tools to actually get users to interact with those technologies, to get it from the million or 2 million blockchain users that there are today to the billion or so grandmas that we need to be using this technology to actually start solving a lot of these challenges. So we've run a fund. We've invested. Again, we're deploying capital in a few different projects right now. You can find us at bicameralventures.com. You can find me on Twitter at alexm_bicameral or on LinkedIn at Alex McDougall. And I'm excited about this topic. I've spent a lot of time thinking about it, and we do a lot of speaking about it as well.
And I believe you may be writing a book, but I'll let you tee that up later. Justin,
he's me.
Welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to see you. Look at you all excited, happy. I know VCTV brings joy around the world, so I'm glad that you're showing it today. Welcome back. Little intro, little background.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Love being here. So my, I guess, background has been all around financial technology. I've done a lot of data work in the course of the financial technology I've been doing. Fair amount of work in the blockchain space. I worked on a blockchain, a Bitcoin exchange actually, a long time ago, and then kind of did a lot of development around the kind of ICOs and global investments and seeing how people really responded to getting access to the capital markets in a very, very different way, where there was just a complete lack of restrictions, and it was fascinating. So now what I'm doing primarily is working on a platform called ABE, and we're basically setting up a platform for our alternative investments. So where people can invest in securities from around the world. So make like the real securities markets that are fully regulated, compliant, all those sort of things. Make them kind of function like the ICO markets did, where it was very, very frictionless and moving your securities around, moving money around, making access for folks. So that's kind of the bulk of my days that I do. A couple of really fun data plays that I see emerging are around, and I've done some work with companies in both the ad tech space as people are kind of getting more cognizant of ad tech and what it's doing with their data and kind of the horrifying things there. And then another company called Fathom Privacy that's letting people kind of aggregate a lot of their data, because we have seen these really cool things where the governments maybe being more heavy-handed than they could be or should be, but are really forcing a lot of folks to open up and make your data accessible, like make you be able to access your Facebook data, get all the data that Google has about you, so that then as a user, you can process it in your own way. And so that's been a lot of fun also.
That's exciting. And that is definitely going to be a conversation. I know Alex and others have worked on this as well. As with data comes great power and great responsibility, as Uncle Ben once said. But what does that mean, and how are we ready to handle it is a big question that we are going to talk about today. Brad, welcome to the show as well. If you can, a little intro, a little background.
Sure. Thank you for having me. It's great to be back on. So glad you asked me back. It's great to be among all these very impressive people as well. So I've been an entrepreneur since high school. I started my first small business then, and it was a long time ago. And then I started my first real venture in college. And then I've started since in over 19 companies. Some have been successes, some have not. And hopefully I've learned from those failures and made the next ventures better. I got in the internet business in 1994. with my first company. And then we grew a few different businesses around that. Been involved in a few different public companies. I got into AI in 1998. We created a search engine and some other various black box products around an algorithm that we licensed, real-time neural network algorithm, which was very early on in the kind of quote unquote modern day AI space. And this is before cloud computing and everything else. And then I built a few other companies and sold them to a group in India. And then we raised a large amount of private equity, and we bought 10 companies around the globe, one of which was Lycos, the search engine. We changed the company worldwide to be Lycos. And so now that company has now changed back to another name called Brightcom, but it's a large digital media group, one of the largest in the globe outside as far as independent digital media companies. And then separately, I co-founded a company called EdgeCase AI, which is based in the US and Israel. And we focus primarily on medical AI, so assisted medical and using AI for that. Our focus area is on the data side. So we take unstructured data, so images, MRIs, CAT scans, and so on. And then we have physicians all over the globe where we then normalize that data so it gets annotated and ready for the AI to really understand and learn. So I believe all that there's no such thing as bad data. It's just how you utilize it and understand it. So that's been our main focus, and glad to talk about it and excited to be here today. Thanks.
Wonderful. Excited to have you and excited to unpack a lot of that. Next up, what to say? So many and so few words at the same time for our next guest. One of my favorite co-hosts that comes and joins from all corners of the world, Mr. Gary Fowler, who I am convinced is just an artificial intelligence bot living in a Zoom world, but he himself has proven me otherwise. Gary Fowler, welcome back to the show, master of AI.
I was waiting for it, Kyle. I was waiting for it. Not the grandmaster, not the grandfather. So my name's Gary Fowler, and I've only done 15 companies, Brad, and but I've never had a failure. I've just had a lot of skin taken out of my hide, and I've gotten through. So I was involved in the original management team at Click Software. That company was sold last August, a year ago, for $1.35 billion. I actually named the company. I also have near unicorn status now with Eva, that I founded 4 years ago with David Yang, a billionaire from Russia. And it's a Silicon Valley-based company using AI and remote workforce management. I'm also the CEO and co-founder of GSD Venture Studios, which comes from the back of Mark Zuckerberg's office where it says, "Get shit done." And that's the name of our company. So we're an operational venture studio, curating talent from around the world. I did live in Russia 14 years, and I work with some top Russian scientists, as well as being an MBA professor in Russia and starting the first accelerator. So it's great to be here. I mean, we look at the amount of data that we have out there today. They estimate by the year 2025, there'll be 175 zettabytes of data. So to give you, for instance, if you took that data and put them on Blu-ray disc, that would stack to the moon 23 times. So there's a lot of data. Today, we have about 33 zettabytes of data. So this is growing. We have an enormous problem that we've got to solve. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk about some of the ways that we're able to do it today. So thank you, Kyle.
Absolutely. Data. Ravi, continue this conversation. You've got to say data at some point. We're 4 for 4. Take us into 5 for 5. Welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you. A little intro and a little background on yourself as well. Whoop. Oh, Ravi, while you're taking care of that, Ritesh, welcome back to the show as well. If you can, just go ahead and unmute yourself and a little intro, a little background.
Yes. Thank you, Kyle. It's an honor and a pleasure to be back here. Really appreciate for the invitation. Myself, Ravi Agrawal. I'm the managing director and co-founder of GSD Ventures. GSD Venture is the early stage fund. We invest in early stage companies from seed to seed plus round. We primarily invest in three types of domain. One is the cybersecurity, other one is healthcare IT, and third one is AI. AI not being a domain, it's a technology, so it cut across all the domain. So it gives us an ability to get into various companies. So far, we have done two funds. We have just closed our last fund at $50 million and going for the third fund, which is a $120 million fund. And it's going to be a global fund, which will basically be working towards US, India, Singapore, Vietnam, and Malaysia corridor. And the whole idea is that what we have figured out in last 4 years or 5 years of a journey in the venture, that good companies can be born anywhere. Talent is everywhere in the world, right? So you have to tap into the talent and the good companies around the world and ultimately bring them down to US. We are a US-based fund. So for us, a company has to come down to US and do business here. So this third fund is primarily focused on sourcing the deals around the world, incubating them at the local or domestic geography, getting them to a point where they are ready for the US market and bring them in US and command the valuation that they should be commanding, but at a fraction of the cost. Two of our companies are on the way to become a unicorn. One is Deep Instinct, the other one is Viome. Deep Instinct is in the cyber security space. We invested at a very early stage when they were at $5 to $7 million. Viome, same story in the wellness space, healthcare wellness space. Invested around when they were around $8 to $10 million. They both are very close to $500 million valuation in 2.5 years. What I have learned in my journey as a venture capitalist is that all the companies right now, AI is the buzzword and data is the buzzword. This has been there for ages. Now we have got the capability to go inside the data and see what exactly is going on and how the trends are coming in. Before that, I believe 6 years or 7 years ago, that capability was not there. The processing capability was not there. Now it has happened. And the revolution is happening right in front of us in last 6 months, whenever this pandemic started. I think that has expedited the whole revolution of data and AI, right? AI is just a medium. The way I see is AI is the medium. Data is the real key. And data is the oil that is basically pushing this revolution forward. So absolutely looking forward to talk more about AI data, specifically data is one of my dear subject nowadays. And I would speak more on the healthcare IT. I have seen like what's happening in the wound care, what's happening in cardiology, what's happening in the cancer space. It's amazing. It's amazing. Never, very hard to believe that, you know what, now instead of a radiologist, you need an AI platform that can go and do the same job a radiologist would be doing for last 20, 30 years, right? That is absolutely possible using a platform, right platform. So yeah, great to be here. Pleasure for inviting. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting. Looking forward to talk more.
Absolutely. And we're definitely going to be talking about a lot of that today. And Ravi, welcome to the show. A little background, a little intro on yourself.
Hey, Kyle. Good to see you again. Thank you for having me back. So I'll begin by saying that my long-term focus has always been in the securities industry in one shape or form. I spent most of my career working in sell-side investment houses, Deutsche Bank, Barclays Capital, through various capacities, largely focused in research and trading. And again, straddling across the discretionary investment space as well as the systematic / quantitative investment space. But the latter is where I've sort of traversed to more and more over the years. Now, I've sort of through that time clearly seen a curve with respect to how organizations, financial services based organizations, hedge funds, investment managers, all kinds of companies in the financial space have become more accustomed to using data in their investment processes, in their operational processes, in all facets of their businesses. So that's something that has sort of really led me on this journey of kind of looking at where data is not just sort of a support function, but a real driver for the alpha generation of our business from an investment process. So to cut a long story short, after my career in the sell-side industry, I had linked up with a group of researchers who had become quite highly versed in the deep reinforcement learning space, which is an offshoot of machine learning, which you'll see people talking about more and more, popularized by things such as Google's DeepMind company, which has become famous with the AlphaGo research that they produced. We've been using that technology now for a couple of years to deep dive into financial data to uncover patterns that we've used to trade currencies, equities, and now we're going into more and more into derivative products. And sort of on that latter point, it's quite interesting. Over the last couple of years in this journey, what has really sort of been a real eye-opener for me is that it's not just the raw data, it's actually the data that we're creating as sort of a second order derivative of our processes. So it's kind of a derivative of the data itself, which is allowing us to find even more new signals that are allowing us to drive our investment process into new directions. So in a nutshell, I'm currently working in a startup investment manager right now. Again, a little bit more micro compared to some of the other investors on the panel who are focused on sort of macro investing in other businesses. We are exclusively in the securities business, trading across various asset classes, again, with a real core focus on deep and reinforcement learning.
Wonderful. Welcome back, and excited to dive into that further as well. And last but not least, Henry, welcome back to the show. It's a pleasure to have you as always as well. If you have the moment, if you can, unmute yourself, and we'd love to hear a little intro and background on yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Kyle and Elena. So just FYI for the wonderful audience here, I'm sort of currently in transit. So if I'm sort of blocking my video, please be understanding. And just to share a couple of quick thoughts. So by way of background, I'm an auditor by training and consulting. Worked in asset management on Wall Street, CFO both in public and private. As of current, I have two hats. One is I am a founder and managing partner of my own firm, of an advisory firm, providing interim CFO work with startups and SMBs. The second hat is I'm a venture partner for a venture fund looking for early stage companies to invest. Areas of focus are fintech, blockchain, consumer, AI, ML, and LT. And there's an others bucket. The others bucket will sort of have two criteria. Number one is it's a vertical that I can understand. And then the second criteria, it's big enough for me to look into and invest. Let me add a little bit more color on top of what my colleagues here have said. So Gary talked about how much data have been generated. And then Ritesh, I believe, talked about how machine learning has been taking off. So if you look at in percentage terms, I think when I talk about percentage terms, I think people will have more appreciation what's happening in the world that we're living in. If you look at the last 2 years, the data that have been generated worldwide, it makes up 98% of all the data that we have generated as a human race since inception. So if you just put that into perspective, why data is the new oil or data is the new electricity, there's a reason for it. Now, people talking about machine learning as a buzzword, yeah, it is a buzzword, but machine learning has not been anything new. Some people might not know, some people might know, some people might not know. Machine learning has been around since the 1800s. For some who's been studying it, it's been what I call the modern machine learning. It's been around since the 50s by Turing's learning machine. So machine learning has been nothing new, but why is it getting so much attention? The reason is because it's a perfect storm in a sense that we have an exponential increase in data, and also the computing power, the cost of computing power have come down. So which is the point that Ritesh talked about, and then the sort of data generation, what Gary talked about. So this is sort of the perfect storm that we're in. And that's why we're talking machine learning and data. Hope to shed some lights on that area.
Wonderful, and thank you very much, Henry. And again, welcome everyone to the show. Henry, just coming back to you as we talked a little snake draft here. Would love to get your thoughts just in general on the current state of machine learning and data. I know that those are two very both combined, also separate things. And while I have you just on the side for the moment, would love to hear any further thoughts that you have on the current state of things as we have consumed so much data, but what does things look like today and how does that going to affect things going forward?
Sure, absolutely. So if you look at machine learning in terms of predictions and generation and algorithm, it's better than 5 to 2 years ago. The machine algorithm, it's only as good as the cleanliness or the usefulness of the data. So if things are moving the way it should, a year from now or 2 years from now, the algorithm of the machine learning algorithm will continue to improve as a result of the data that we collect. Because the more data that we have, chances are the better predictions that we can make. So in the current state of environment, if you look at a lot of startups, you'd be really surprised if you don't see a deck, if they're in software development, they don't have an AI, ML, deep learning, or something to that effect. Some of them, they may not have it. They even put the buzzwords in it just to make sure that they stay current or just, hopefully they're working on something to that effect. So once again, it's a very exciting field. I think things would get even more advanced as time continue to move on. Certainly the pandemics have accelerated the digitization of things. When you're digitizing things, you're creating even more data. So I think that becomes a feedback loop. It's going to exponentially increase the adoption and uses of machine learning and data.
Absolutely. Ritesh, same to you. What do you see as the current state of machine learning and data? I know you focus heavily on data and data at the intersection with artificial intelligence, but where are you seeing the things currently as they are?
Yeah, so I think Henry put it very well. So I'll continue on that point. See, right now in last 5 years, I think if I remember correctly, 70% of the digital data has been generated in the last 5 years, right? And the data that has been generated, there's a lot of anomalies in it. And that's why you see that most of the AI neural networks that have been created, they are not very effective, right? Because a lot of data cleansing is required. And some of the data is biased, is not ready for process, and it takes time to build it, right? But as we go forward from this point onward, the quality of data is improving. The processing speed is improving, and the cost per process is going down. So I believe in next 2 years, the real output of the revolution that we have seen in the last 3-4 years, we'll start seeing the results. That's where, you know what, going to a doctor's office would be very different than what we see today, right? Dealing with a B2B company or a B2C company like Amazon's of the world would be very, very different. You don't have to go and buy the product. Product will come to you depending upon your need. That is how powerful the data and the processing is right now, right? Other thing is that in the business world or in the software development world, most of the companies are focusing on both types of data, which is unstructured and structured. And unstructured is almost 80% of the data that is being created, right? Which includes music files, which includes video files, which includes PDFs. These are all unstructured data, and there are treasure codes, right? There's so much information around it. Just one example, invoice management, very simple thing, right? A large company like KPMG processes roughly around 3,000 invoices per day. The army of people they have in their offices at one location to process the invoice is mind-boggling. They spend, one of my company, their client is KPMG. They spend almost $5 million per location on invoice management. And with AI and the kind of tools of the product there we have implemented over there, the cost is fraction now. And look at the efficiency. The thing that used to take at least 7 days to process is being processed in less than 5 minutes without any manual intervention. Look, what I'm trying to say here is that all these things are happening in front of us. Healthcare IT, right? Clinical trial. Why it takes a pharmaceutical company to launch a drug after so many years of research and clinical trials? Why? Because there's no AI involved in this thing. New age companies, they are getting into the clinical trial, which are basically doing the matchmaking. Matchmaking means what? I have lung cancer, I have diabetes, and I have other issues, right? A drug is being going for a clinical trial, and they need these kind of people. Then you add on top of ethnicity, right? Right now, that is not being done. It is being just pick one parameter, do it, and then go to FDA for approval. But now with AI, all this data is available. It's all fractured, fragmented, but it's all available. AI is able to, or the machine learning is able to bring everything together, put it in a perspective and say, this is the right set of patients that you should be running a clinical trial. What is the outcome of that? A, efficiency. B, you cut down the cost. C, time to market. D, you are doing more effective clinical trials on wide variety of patients with different ethnicity. So the applicability of this medicine, whether you are an Indian or you are an American or you are white or you are a black, would be much better than what is going on right now. So that is what my view is in data processing in the AI world, that it is touching every sphere of our life, right? And if somebody says, you know what, I don't care what's happening in the data world or the AI world, you know what, either you don't have anything to do with the world, you're completely isolated. Otherwise, there's no way you can get away with that.
Or you need to tune into more episodes of VCTV, shameless plug. But in all truth, you're right. I mean, you should be paying attention to what kind of data you have and how you should be using it. And if you don't know, there are 7 individuals here who can tell you. Ravi, to you, what are you seeing as the current state of things? Ravi, you're on mute.
So again, narrowing it down to the businesses that I'm involved in, I think one of the points I touched on before is over the course of 15 years, seeing an evolution specifically in the financial industry of how data is used differently. Now, you know, everyone knows that the financial industry generates a huge amount of data, and kind of in contrast to what Ritesh was just saying, some of it is in fact quite well structured. So although you need to do fair amounts of cleansing, particularly, for example, with equity data when it comes down to dividends and various other corporate actions, generally speaking, we are in kind of a more of a privileged position where the data tends to be quite well structured. So it's, again, been, from our perspective, from where my company is coming from, it's been more about not so much the quantity and quality of the data. It's really about getting an edge in terms of how we use the data versus the huge amount of proliferation of systematic investment strategies that are out there these days. I mean, everyone knows about the big companies, Renaissance Technologies, D. Shaw, Bridgewater, all these guys. We're all fighting for the same for the same goals effectively. So this really drives our ambition to find a new type of systematic investment management, which is not just purely deterministic on the data streams that we get that are pretty much available to everyone, but it's really about looking between the lines of that data, doing different types of transforms, taking it to another derivative of the data and finding signals that other people haven't been able to find so far, which is why, and particularly given that generates such huge amounts of data, if you think about the second order of the data, you know, deep learning for us has been an absolute gift, because it's just that perfect process that allows you to process absolutely massive amounts of data. And now that we have our offices filled with computers with stacks of GPUs, that process just becomes easier and easier over time, and we're really starting to scratch the surface of what's possible.
It's not to make a cheesy reference, but one of the things I think you're alluding to is that signal, right? The cheesy reference I was referring to is going to be of Moneyball, and how data was used in the Major Leagues Baseball and was actually able to craft something very unique, right? Finding a signal, finding something that others hadn't seen before. And I think that's a good point of where we're going, or where we can go, and where we should be thinking, to Ravi and Henry's point around data as well. Gary, Brad, Justin, Alex, I'm coming to you next. Gary, to you, current state of things as you see it around ML and data in general.
Well, so, you know, I talk about the KISS principle, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So everybody on this show, like myself, I'm sure has 3 to 10 email addresses, Dropbox box, Google Drive, Messenger, LinkedIn, all kinds of data sources. And each one of us on here, on the show, say week after week, you know, I've lost something. Did you send me the PowerPoint presentation? Did you send me that file? You know, the file exists, you can't find it. Why? You've either forgotten the location or forgotten the keywords. So we all are a state, as Alvin Toffler said, infobesity. That problem, I believe there's going to be two worlds, one of the people that know and can access their data and ones that can't. So we have the problem. I've talked to the CEO, of a Fortune 50 company, and he told me very simply, I have an easy solution, Gary, for the problem. I said, what? He said, if it was older than 2 years old, I delete the email. I don't have to worry about it. I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, about a year ago, I made another decision. What's that? If it was older than a year, I would delete that. I said, what if it's something important? If it's that important, they'll send it back to me. 6 months ago, he told me, if it's 6 months, I said, but I'm not going to mention his name, but I said, what if it's not there? What if it's in Google Drive? He said, well, doesn't matter. If it's that important, they'll send it. We are in a really, and this is a Stanford MBA kind of person, right? We're all in a state where we need to do something to be able to correct it. We are inundated. And, we need to take those 33 zettabytes of data today, and we need to be able to understand it, because a person, and look, you talked about Moneyball, Kyle, the people that understand that are going to be able to do things. Let me talk about something else. So the state of AI in 2016 hit the ability that we are better at looking at images than a human. So give you, for instance, if you had 10,000 pictures, right? Pictures of dogs and species, it'd take you days to classify. Which one is this? Is it a chow chow? Here's a chihuahua, it's easy, but is this a whippet or a greyhound, right? I mean, so the computer, being able to do it through the computer with our artificial intelligence and computer vision, can now do that more accurately than a human. And by the way, it takes minutes or seconds rather than spending a week, right? Keep it simple, stupid. So, have it involved. I created a Google-like search for the personal cloud and understood how the searching capabilities then migrated to unsupervised AI. We are at the greatest opportunity. And as Kyle, as we said many times, with this digital transformation, we need to use the data wisely. We need to be able to not only think about how to make decisions on it, but have smart assistants that can help us better make those decisions. And my next article in Forbes, robotic process automation, how we don't have to waste our time on some of those decisions and can make them more wisely.
Absolutely. Justin, to you.
Oh, you went out of order there. Tripped me up. So I think the really exciting stuff here, or kind of where we're going, is that in the last few years, we got really, really good at building AI systems that can solve cool problems, right? So like all the neural network, the deep learning, the recurrent neural networks, all that sort of stuff. And I've worked with that, and it's really fascinating. And it's super good at solving toy problems, I want to say, like, figure out all the character or whatever, decipher these digits in this picture, and even some of like the identifying dogs and cats and stuff. But when people start going toward actually solving real world problems, then it becomes a data management problem. So now it's data management, it's data processing. My good friend that was working on the Google self-driving car project said, and he was like a high level engineer at Google, he would almost always just do data management tool chains. Like they were just looking at the video feed and trying to figure out how to process the video feed way before it actually drops into any of the AI models. And so I think that we had a lot of interesting kind of computer sciencey breakthroughs in the GPUs and stuff around being able to actually do the modeling, to do the AI. And now we're going back to the really human tasks of processing the data. And let's figure out these data processing tool chains that can actually figure out how do we ask the important questions? And it's similar to what we were talking about in the finance industry before too, where you've got price signals. Everybody gets the same price and volume signals. But then how do you turn that into a meaningful data set that you can actually drop into one of these fancy new models? And it's been really fun to watch that space start to play catch up. And I have a couple friends with companies in that space that are just for data techs that are we are going to make this processing pipeline sane.
Well, it's crazy too. I mean, just from the voice side, I mean, we saw that as an emerging trend in 2019, and now here in 2020, voice is still something that is looked at as the next user interface as well. And we've all got devices in our homes, which I will not name to not trigger anyone's particular ones. And maybe Alex doesn't have one as he's shaking his head, but nonetheless, voice is something that's still inherently interactive and integrated into our world. And what data can be impacted from that, right? To new services and business models around elderly, around newborns, to just our daily lives, and to bring that into the workforce as well. And how does that look like on the back end around supply chains and manufacturing and just the general automation of things? I will pause there. Brad, current state.
So I share a lot of what everybody else is thinking. I look at my whole business life is around dealing with bottlenecks of data and normalizing it, taking unstructured data and structuring it. So it is a constant challenge. I said this when I started that I don't believe any data is bad data. All data is good data, even if it's quote unquote bad, because you learn from the bad data and you can pick up why it's bad to be able to teach it. So I think most companies right now are in the stage of understanding what they're going to do with their data. They have it, and they realize that it's an asset, but a lot of them have no idea on really what or how to utilize it, to monetize it, or how to improve their business with it. And I think that's the first challenge. And I think we're coming up to a climax there, because the AI engines are getting better and smarter, and so you can take lower quality or lower and less sophisticated data to be able to use it. Where we focus is on the sophisticated, complex data, for instance, medical images or even advertising data. So I wear a couple hats. One is on the advertising side, and one is on the medical side. On the advertising side, I think that we've, as an industry, been leaders in using behavioral data, as you can see with all the big players and even all the ad networks and relevance of ads that you see. It's all essentially ML and AI driven in the back end. And it's taking huge amounts of historical data and being able to predict and make user experience better, hopefully, with ads. So I think there's a lot to learn from that. And a lot of that comes also from, there's a crossover between intelligence and homeland security and even marketing data. So a lot of that comes down to privacy. And privacy is, I think, one of the key roadblocks and things that we have to really be worried about is privacy of data, and not being afraid to address that head on. And so on the medical side, that's a key area. And one of the things we've been able to do is look and say, okay, what do we do to keep the data? If someone has an MRI, that theoretically could be identified and tied back to a person. So it's important to understand that most of the hospitals, or even all the hospitals, really are taking privacy really seriously. So keeping everything HIPAA compliant, making all the data anonymized, so that you remove all the personal identifiable information. And then that data can be really, really useful in the real world, and tie multiple data sets together to be able to then take those data sets to actually then be able to train the AIs that are out there so they can do a better job. And that comes down to having really high quality experts to be able to look at that data, train it, and to be able to annotate it so that it's in a format that the AI engines can actually really learn from and grow quickly. And so that's the current state. I'm going to just take one step forward and say what I think is the next state, which is synthetic data. And synthetic is a really interesting area. We've built a synthetic platform that takes real world scenarios visually, and we can create synthetic data out of it. And the advantage of that, and I highly recommend anybody look at synthetic, is because you're always looking for anomalies. The non-anomalistic data is not as interesting. It's hard to find those scenarios and create those scenarios that don't exist, that you can't get data for, because it's expensive, it's hard to find. That's a bottleneck. So synthetic puts you over that, and you can create synthetic in about 100 times cheaper and about 100 times faster. And so I think that the growth and the bottlenecks are starting to shrink a lot. And I think that that's going to really accelerate our learning, which will just be an exponential growth over the next few years.
Alex just unmuted himself, but I will say this. I think you are spot on. I've heard and had many more conversations in the past couple of weeks around synthetic data and the power that it can hold Again, mostly at the enterprise level right now when building enterprise applications. We'll see how it's applied in the consumer realm, as Brad's shaking his head, ready to challenge me, but we're gonna hold on that. We're gonna hold on it. It's definitely for the audience. If you haven't looked into this, whether you're an investor or an entrepreneur, you need to be talking about this, and you need to be considering how this may play into your world. Reach out to Brad or any of us to learn more. Alex, to you, current state.
Yeah, synthetic data is super interesting. It's essentially examining the counterfactual in a fully realized 360-degree view. Want to build on a couple points and then take it a little bit of a different direction, I think. One is, over this last period, and to take it back to our core point of machine learning, the things that we've been doing digitally have changed over the last 6 months. We used to do a lot of searching, a lot of initial networking, a lot of sort of the time-consuming things digitally, but then we closed deals in person. We went and met people in person. We bought houses in person. We had our important meetings in person. And all of those things have migrated digitally, almost predominantly, almost exclusively for at least a little while. And so the signals that we're looking for when just thinking about from a consumer advertising perspective, the signals that we're looking for used to be, okay, well, what does a person do digitally that means they'll then go out physically and close that deal, or hiring somebody or things like that. And so the signals have gotten from, okay, well, we need to make this jump into the real world, to no, that person did that, and then that exact same person went through and did this and clicked this button and bought this house. And so the value of the data that we've been using and creating digitally has just gone like this over the last 6 months, let's call it. And so we're in this really, really interesting world currently where there's a lot more signal and obviously a lot more noise because there's a lot more data being created, but the value of those actual pieces has gone through the roof. And so where we're focusing a lot of our time right now is actually to circle back on something that's almost cliche at this point of data is the new oil. And we say that all the time, but has anybody funded it like oil? Has anybody sort of looked at the actual business model or economics of actually treating data like oil? Can we look at a home ownership or a router or something like that as an actual resource generating unit, or a piece of, or an individual consumer as a resource generating unit? And then also bring those consumers into that value chain, which is something that's been completely eliminated from a lot of our consumer data source right now. So we're working on a really, really interesting project in India to essentially bring the consumer in, fund it like sort of you would look at it as an oil royalty, and actually start treating and funding and creating this data world where you're actually looking at the resource as what it is, a resource, instead of a byproduct as we sort of look at it today. Even though more and more people are looking at their data vaults or data sources and saying, okay, yeah, great, I have this asset, what do I do with it? It's sort of flipping and changing the primacy of what that data actually is, and making that the specific resource that's being built around. But that brings up the big critical point that we spend a lot of time of, is currently the data flow is outwards from a person into the vaults of Google, the vaults of Facebook, the vaults of every company, and essentially everybody's aggregating their own data sources. So your digital persona is split across 100 different places. And Justin touched on it briefly. You can get your data back from Facebook, but what the hell do you do with it? You can get some archaic CSV file from Google. What the hell do you do with that? So this next level of infrastructure, this next paradigm where I want, if I'm comfortable in the infrastructure of my own data vaults, I want everything to be in there. I want all my Google stuff. I want all my medical records. I want my COVID profile in there. Like, I want everything that's all in this 360-degree data vault that's all trained around me. And then that data profile is exponentially more valuable than any of the individual ones that are currently being sourced by third parties. So again, back to the resource piece of, you almost have two different grades of data. You have the shared data that I know is right because I'm doing it for myself, and then I'm sharing it with people, versus the extracted data, which is where you get a lot of this noise and weirdness and third-party sources, and it's always ethically a bit iffy. You have to strip out PII, but there's this big privacy versus profit motivation or fundamental conflict that fits in there. And then if you can create the infrastructure, which again is where we're spending a lot of our time right now, of these self-sovereign data vaults, or these personalized data orbs, whatever you want to think about them as, And then you can start essentially running AI or creating personalized AI or intelligence amplification is another really, really cool stream on that, where you're essentially training a digital version of you based on your complete 360-degree data vault. Then you're in a much better position to go out into the digital world and be a part of it on an even field as all the algorithms that are working, against you or manipulating you to do certain things. And just in general, be a modern digital citizen in our now, as Kyle mentioned off the top, 100% digital world. So data has never been more valuable, but I also think we've never had less access to it of ourselves. And all of these cool new tools that we're talking about, we should be able to apply them to ourselves first and essentially, put ourselves at an even playing field with all the, I don't want to say corporations like it's a bad thing, but with the people who are generally have created and have optimized the big data world so far. So I said a lot of stuff there. I know we're talking about the state of the world today. There's a bunch of really cool opportunities, but I'll leave it there because I know we're running short on time.
No, it's perfect. Thank you so much, Alex. I think you're spot on along with everyone else. So we are at the lightning round. So we're going to come around for quick closing thoughts, very quick closing thoughts, and then where everyone can find you. So Alex, we'll go back on the snake draft. We'll start with you. A quick closing thought, if anything else to add, or maybe an opportunity that investors should be looking at. And then very, very quickly, where can everyone find you again online?
Sure. So you can find me at bicameralventures.com or LinkedIn, Alex McDougall, or Twitter, AlexM_bicameral. And I think the biggest piece of our roadmap right now to solving a whole bunch of our problems is getting past our lizard human brains operating in a completely digital machine speed world. So giving us access to our own data and giving us the data analytic tools that work for us as humans. The book I'm writing that I will give very quick on is called Lizard and the Machine, Calculable Integrity in a Machine Speed World, lizardandmachine.com for that. But that's where I think this data revolution needs a reorientation away from big stores to micro stores that still doesn't sacrifice its referenceability and the giganticness of big data that even makes it better. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Don't jump off camera yet. All right, Justin, to you and everyone. Again, we are at the top of the hour, so we've got to go quick. But quick closing thoughts. Where can everyone find you?
I just second everything everybody said. So you can find me on Twitter. I'm so totally sweet on Twitter. And then abe.io is the exchange we're building. And look forward to hearing from you folks. But everybody else said it better, so I won't restate anything else.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much. Ravi, to you. Ratish.
Sorry about that.
No, I 100% agree. Wonderful experience sharing the thoughts and learning more. You can find me at www.saracap.com or you can find me at LinkedIn, Ritesh Agrawal. And we are currently deploying the capital. So absolutely looking for the right set of deals. So please do reach out to us if you have a great deal that you want to share with us. And my view on what's happening
Super
right
quick.
now.
Super quick. Super quick.
Okay. So this is a very interesting time. I think we got to learn what's going on and deploy these things for the betterment of the humanity. What the technology is doing is completely changing the landscape for the humans. So with that, thank you very much and pleasure to be on board.
Thank you. You as well. Ravi.
Yeah, so I would say that the most exciting thing for me that drives me right now is getting beyond just looking at the data that's generated by first order and natural processes. And actually the second order data that's generated by the processes that we make and linking, across different asset classes, for example, in my space. So that's what's really exciting me right now. And if anyone's interested in talk, you can find me easiest on LinkedIn. Thank you.
Wonderful. Gary.
Yeah, so Gary Fowler, LinkedIn. I'm happy to talk to you. GSD curates incredible AI companies. We've been involved at the beginning of unicorns that have been sold for over $1 billion. So I'd love to hear from you. And doesn't matter where you are. We use Silicon Valley as a port to the rest of the world. Contact me if you need some help. Great to be here today. Thanks, Kyle.
Absolutely. Thank you as well. Brad, to you. And then Henry, I'll come to you just next.
So I'll be quick. I just think this is an amazing time to be in business and to be active. We're in this, and I think we're fortunate to be in this industrial revolution that we hopefully our kids will be able to take and run with, at least my kids, I hope. You can reach me on LinkedIn. It's Brad Cohen. You can also go to edgecase.ai, edgecase.ai, or Brad at Ingress Ventures, INGRESS.ventures.
Absolutely wonderful. Henry, to you to close us out. Where can everyone
Absolutely.
find
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful opportunity to close it. Last but not least, right? So I think in short, even though that the buzzword machine learning AI has been used the last couple of years, I think the excitement is we're only scratching the surface. For those who are just exploring these type of terms in the industry, it's not late. I think we're really scratching the surface of it. Plenty of opportunities. I can reach on LinkedIn, Henry On. There's an email also over there. Lastly, thank you for the opportunity, Latoken, Elena, and also certainly one of the greatest, Kyle. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'm glad I'm paying you well for that one. Everyone, thank you so much for all your insights and expertise today. I know that we could talk on this subject for hours upon hours because there is so much to unpack, and we will have each of you back for further episodes to do that. To your audience, thank you so much for tuning in. If you like what you heard, click subscribe, give us a thumbs up, reach out if you'd like to be on a show or have the chance to pitch us as well. As all of the investors have said today, we're all available 24/7, 365 online. I would love to continue the conversation and hear from you as well. Again, investors, thank you so much for your time today. Also, a big shout out, thank you, Gary, to Elena and to the entire LA Token team for making BCTV possible every day here for you. Tomorrow, we will be back, which will be in a very, very exciting episode. This was more exciting than I anticipated. And I am very excited, even more so now, for tomorrow as we talk about one of my favorite subjects, fintech and blockchain, to end the week. And with that being said, I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. We'll be back here tomorrow talking about fintech, blockchain, and closing out the week on what's happening in the world in venture capital, trends, technologies, regions around the world. Thank you very much. Reach out to all of us. Again, I'm Kyle Ellicott, your host. Thank you.